Good morning, everybody. Zach Marzo here from Melman Podcast.
David here.
David Melman is with me. Really excited this morning. We have Dr. Amit Patel from Summit Spine and Joint Centers. I'm going to let him introduce himself formally, but great guy. Started from, the bottom like a lot of people and, is doing big things and just grown and is an awesome business mind and physician as well, which you don't find too many times, having that business mind as well as the medical mind. So really cool to have him on. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Patel.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Hey, good morning, guys. Really an honor to be here. I appreciate you guys inviting me up here. I've been working with David and Zach for almost, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, a long time.
And so this is a great opportunity to share what we do and what you guys have been doing. There's the real thing on the podcast. I think it's been a great idea. It's been pretty inspirational for small business owners who are medium and small size. For example, we had a IT issue in our office, and then I plugged onto the podcast, and you guys are interviewing a great IT group that does work here at Melman Law Firm, and we're going to we may hire them.
That's amazing. Sure.
So, and that's awesome. So a little background about me. I'm a interventional pain physician. My background is anesthesia. I grew up in Virginia as a small kid. My parents were immigrants here. My dad was a civil engineer. Grew up with a family of physicians. My sister's a physician. My grandfather is a physician. I have 9 cousins are physicians. My dad was the odd apple civil engineer, but then he became an entrepreneur in the state and in the hotel industry. So I grew up in a cocoon of a business where basically my dad, the first hotel we bought, I lived right behind the customer office, and so I'd give rooms out, answer phone calls as I got older, and so that was kind of my first experience in sort of business, customer service, and doing those things. I went on to go to undergrad at the University of Virginia, where I majored in chemistry. And then with the family pressures and things like that, I went on to become a physician at Eastern Virginia Medical School. I did my residency at the University of Michigan, where I trained in anesthesia, and I did my fellowship at Emory. We located it in Atlanta. We had a lot of family over here. And so I joined academic faculty at Emory for about a year and a half. And so where I did pain management and did anesthesia at Emory. I liked academics a lot, but I wanted to sort of the entrepreneurial self. I wanted to go out in private practice, so I went ahead and joined a physician on the south side of Georgia for about a year and a half, learned the business well, learned about customer care, learned about billing, learned about how to take care of patients, et cetera, et cetera. And so at that point, I kind of was like, you know what, I think I want to do this on my own. And so I had a big non-compete clause, and so I went across from the south side in Stockbridge. I opened in Lawrenceville, my first location, and I'll continue to talk.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
My first, honestly, just thinking about that. One, growing up, how you grew up, being around your family, that obviously helps, right? Everybody from an early age, they learn it from somewhere. My first question, because you said, you work for somebody on the south side, then you wanted to do it yourself. Do you feel like who you were working for kind of mentored you into wanting to do it yourself, or do you feel like you learned a lot of what you know now kind of on your own, which is kind of weird to say, but some people, they're like, yeah, I can do this better. Like you almost kind of level up on somebody and you're like, I can do this better. I want to do it on my own. Or do you feel like, somebody had a huge role in making you feel like you could do this and taught you, kind of showed you the ropes? Because not everybody knows, right? You just didn't know anything about it when you started.
That's a great question. I think it was more the latter. I think I had a lot of ideas, but I wasn't an owner. I was a minority partner.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't heard. And I think when you're part of a team, and you may not be the majority owner or the higher equity value guy, but you want to be heard. And so I felt like after a year and a half, I had a lot to add, and I wasn't heard. And at some point, becoming frustrated and saying, hey, I think we should do this or that, and not having it done or executed, you have to make a decision.
Sure.
And so I said, even if I, quote unquote, make less money than I'm making now, or I'm not as successful, I'm going to be okay with that. And once that happened, I was like, I think I can do this. Even if I fail, it's okay. I'm young. I can always go back and work for somebody else. And so that was sort of my kind of the thing that clicked in my head. My mentor, it was probably my father.
Sure.
His work ethic, growing up, his integrity, his honesty, his risk taking, those things that I think that played off on me, and they've always been there for me. So, but I think the latter for that.
Yeah, no,
Sure,
that's
for
cool.
sure. And you brought up a good point. You know, some people think they can get out of school and do it themselves right away. You want it to learn everything before you can kind of dabble into it. Some people just want to jump ship and go right into it and think they can do it. But I'm sure it was a strategic decision to get out of there and work for somebody, like you said, minority partner, to learn every aspect of it and then take everything and make it better into your own, which seems like it's what you did. I mean, from one practice, 2, 3, 4, I can keep counting. In that time frame to open up that many practices, and at your age, not that I'm downplaying your age, but it's incredible. We don't see it every day. In our industry, we see doctor offices all the time, maybe 1, 2 locations. But to do what you've done, it's one thing to be a great doctor, but then also to scale that mindset and to scale the practice itself. I think what's big on that is, I watched an interesting video yesterday for a few minutes, and they asked, what is the biggest hurdle? And that person actually said the biggest hurdle is me, and it's billionaire, I forget the name. And the reason why, because at some point he learned to kind of release and delegate out rather than thinking you can do everything yourself. And I guess that's what I want to ask you, to scale something at that level with that many employees and that many just departments, at what point did you realize after your first that you have to kind of release some of the grasp and let people do their job and put them in there? And the biggest thing is, if you put people to do a job and they're successful at it, you're successful in return. It's a relationship back and forth.
Yeah.
So how did you learn that?
Yeah,
if you don't mind. Yeah.
It's a great question. And that's a difficult question. I think it's an organic process.
Yeah.
As you grow, we went from 1 employee or 3 employees when I first started to leasing out 4,000 square feet and saying, oh my God, there's no way I can pay rent, et cetera, working part-time for the VA and doing those things. And then understanding, look, I can't do billing or submit claims. So the first 10, the one thing that I've done everything in the office that everybody else has done. And I've submitted Blue Cross Blue Shield claims.
Sure.
I use clearinghouses to do that. I set up the IT phone system with the IT guys at the very beginning. I scanned at the very beginning, when we're way back. That's really helped me from a billing standpoint, from a contractual standpoint, and then from hiring. Because now I've done that. Even it may have not been for a long period of time, but I did all of it.
Sure.
So a lot of this, man, I got tired, right? A lot of this fatigue. You start growing, and one thing I knew from my previous experience was that customer service was always an issue in the practice, which led to a decrease in referrals, right? And my field is unique in the sense that if you're an orthopedic surgeon and you see a patient, you fix their hip, they're gone, right? They'll come back. We have chronic patients. So we have patients that we can go from 1 patient to 5,000 patients over a period of time if you retain patients, because they come back on a bi-monthly basis, right? And so you have basically ancillary encounters every month that grow and grow and grow. How can you retain those patients over a period of time? Is it a 50% rotation rate? Is it 70%? I think that's really important. You can build on that. And then how do you bring new patients in? But how do you combine that? And so as we were growing, I knew I needed to add on new billing, right? So I outsourced billing right away. But then I figured out that we're paying 6% of top-line revenue. And then I did the math. So I just hired the billing team away.
Sure.
Brought them as W-2.
Got it.
We did that. I needed an office manager. So I resourced my relationships within the community about who could be a really good office manager for a small practice. I then trusted her to do all the HR hiring. But I was very involved. I think, to be successful at the very beginning, you have to really immerse yourself in all phases of business, just like you did, right? You have to be able to do that, and it has to be something that's your passion. If it's not, then it's hard to be successful, because then you'll wax and wane. And then as we've grown, it's been a different phase for me. We've continued to grow. We added on more physicians, which then we needed more nurse practitioners. I looked at volume. So I have a volume metric that I typically do when I need to bring somebody on that I just kind of felt was right, and we still kind of do that to this day.
Sure.
And then when we did the private equity merger or sale of the practice, we professionalized the infrastructure of the C-suite team. We brought on a compliance officer, Harvard MBA. We brought on a new CFO. We brought on a controller, COO, and ancillary service. Those guys are really good. So you have to have a team. You have to be able to delegate. And then you have to be able to know each person you're pulling. So, my COO and CFO are completely different personalities, and they respond differently, right? I respond differently. And so being able to sort of figure that out, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
I have a quick question. I think for me, like, I kind of want to know, did you, when you were in college, you just got out of college, did you see yourself where you're at now? Or does this kind of like, I mean, you put in the time, you put in the hard work. Obviously, you're scanning, setting up phones. Like, you got to be able to get your hands dirty at first. You're not just going to be able to hire a videographer, a sales team. Like, you got to do it all, and you got to grind and do it. But I'm just wondering if that's been a vision of yours since day one, or it's kind of changed over time, and you're kind of like, dude, I kind of got to this point where, managing multiple practices, a lot of doctors, like, how the hell did this happen? Which I think is cool both ways, right? You just, as long as the bottom line, the foundation was hard work, you kind of didn't know what to come. But some people visualize that. I'm going to have 10 practices by the time of here. How was that kind of for you in your mind? What was your vision when you got out of college?
Yeah. No, so, out of college, the goal was to get into medical school or my parents would kill me. Right?
Yeah, right. Sure.
I did that, and I always wanted my own practice. My uncles had their own practices, medical practices, would go visit, and so I think I'd see that a lot. I grew up in a small business.
Right.
Again, my father is his own boss, which was a lot of work, but also he didn't really have to answer anybody. I think maybe my personality it was hard for me when I worked for another physician my first couple of years. I think I could tell that I wanted to be my own, and I think the decision so did I visualize it? I wanted my own practices, but I've been very blessed and lucky to have this many.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think we'd be this successful this quickly.
Sure.
But I did visualize having my own practice. I thought it might be like a 1 or 2 office thing.
Sure.
But I'm going home my own time, and I'm doing the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's a great answer. And with that kind of growth, there's sacrifice, I think, and I see it in this office, family. Yeah. You're a father, husband. How do you manage your time to not take away too much from your business, but also your family comes first? And I know that you're a family man first. Yeah. So how do you do that where you have enough time for everything?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Balance is always key. I think the idea of being present is important, and I think presence is whether it's sports or family events, being there. And so at the very beginning, we was weekends and weekdays. My kids were younger then; they're 9 and 6 now. So so they didn't have events, soccer events, tennis events, piano, school tutoring, and all that stuff. So I don't think I missed out a lot there. But I think I do what everybody else does. You do your best. I mean, you try to get home. The weekends are pretty protective in terms of trying to be as active as possible with the kids. Sure. And the family. And so that's always a work in progress. And I think, when you have a free weekend that you're not focusing on your business, doing something that's sort of memory making with the families, I think is important.
Sure. And you say be there, and be there means not just, and I'm guilty of doing this sometimes. I'm there, but I'm on my phone. So I want to put my phone away, so I'm actually there, not just like 50% there and in one ear. So I think that's crucial, because if you can come home to a healthy mindset, and of course nothing's perfect, you can take that into the next week of coming in strong, ready to attack. But if you're frustrated with how everything's going there and you feel like you're not giving enough to the kids or the wife or the husband or whatever, you can come into next week feeling good and ready to work, and you have a good support system behind you. I'm sure your wife supports you, the children support you. You're doing everything for them, because at a certain point, there's only so much you can do. You're doing it for them and their foundation, and for your name. And that's a beautiful thing, I think, with scaling it from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 businesses. You could have done 1 or 2 and been done. But I think with the way your brain thinks, you don't want to get bored either. You want to keep it moving, Yeah. So you got to keep engaging your brain, and balance is huge. Making sure, delegation is huge. It's a huge, big thing you bring up there, because you can't scale to the level you've done without, I think, delegating. And we're about 4.5 years in our everyday job, Melman Law Group, and, we're at a point of figuring out the shift of what's the next play. Is it the crazy aggressive play, or are we going to keep this coast play going? And I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because I get bored too.
Building off of that, before you jump in, Dr. Patel, is how do you even now stay motivated? Like, you've had success young, but you still have a hell of a long life to live ahead. And I just wonder, you get to a certain point where, you can get comfortable, but then I think this, like, it's just not maybe in your blood. Like, I think about David, I'm going to get to a point where I can be cozy, or, maybe I'm there, but internally it's like, it's this constant battle to just want to do well, play the game, the competition, the challenge, like that stuff matters. But for you, I don't know, I'm just curious now, what kind of drives you, motivates you, wants you to, continue with Summit Spine and Joint Centers and build that brand as best as you possibly can?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the core why I started the practice, one of the core principles was, can we provide better patient service and patient care to these patients than any other practice? And so if you think about that, the more offices that we have, the more we have the ability to transform that he or she's life, right? And chronic pain is difficult. Chronic pain, you have a lot of anxiety issues. You have some life debilitating issues, and being able to even be able to help them decrease their pain score, get them back to family life, be able to do those things is really, really important. And the core of the mission is that. So by opening more offices, we actually touch more patients' lives. Sure. I think what gets lost in that is hiring the right physicians is important too, and who share the same vision. And so I think that's really important. That's always driven the practice. And I think once we get away from that, I think that's when the practice can have issues. And I think being true to your core values is helping patients get back. It's pretty gratifying when they come back and they make you an apple pie when you did something really, really good. Now, do we get all, that'd be like 1 out of 100 patients. Sure. But that one patient keeps you coming back. It's like playing golf. You get a birdie, I know. You want to keep playing, right?
It's amazing. And, our patients that, you guys treat at times with the Melman Law Group, very, very happy with the service. And a lot of times, they request you. I want to see Dr. Patel. They love you. And not only that, you take it up another level because I know you have people in your office where they follow up too with them. They're following up, making sure the care was great. They're following up with the firm, making sure we have everything we need. So everything you surround yourself with the way you run it is making sure everything is successful, and people are happy, and you're taken care of, whether it's the patients, your employees, the people you work with. And at some point, I always think you can't make everybody happy in terms of your employees, right? You have all these employees. Your patients are happy. You're always on that, but your employees, because you can't always make everybody happy because you don't know what's going on in their life every day. So somebody can be happy this week, but then something happens over the weekend, they're pissed. So how do you manage so many people and personalities? And like you said, you have multiple people on HR, compliance officers. So that's difficult, I think, how did you get that mindset to be able to manage that and not have it affect your patients' everyday visits?
Yeah. That's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And so, I think we're up to 165 employees right now. A lot of them are medical assistants, so that's an entry-level employee who helps patients get back, but they're as important as anybody that we have in our practice. So I think one is delegation, making sure that HR is strong on the employee side. Meeting their issues and questions that they have, what's going on. We have employee satisfaction scores that go out every quarter that help us guide decision-making. We have quarterly meetings with the entire practice based on subsections, MAs, nurses, physicians. And then the whole thing is the culture, creating the culture, I think is really important, right? Creating a culture of kind of openness. If you have an issue, please talk to HR, go to compliance, come to me, right?
Sure.
But that is very hard. Again, everybody's a little bit different. Our C-suite team's different from the finance team to our operations manager. But you really have to set goals and parameters for each division head and have them report back to you to see if we're meeting these goals.
And who sets those goals in each division? Who sets them?
So I think it's a consensus that we all do, right?
Sure.
So we have we call a metric meeting. So every once a week we have a meeting that's basically driven by data, and that's for HR metric is employees that have quit over the last quarter.
Sure.
And so 3 employees quit here. Well, why? Was it pay? Was it a kind of an environment issue, et cetera, et cetera? So that drives. We try to improve that process.
Sure.
The other metrics are procedures or encounters for the month, revenue numbers, and scanning, scaling. So I think that helps us from that standpoint. But the culture really, and I send out emails to the entire practice probably once a month, whether it has to do with something that's going on socially that we can help, or pertinent issues that are hurting the practice right now, was COVID-19, the protest. I think having all those things and discussing that's really important. But you have to have a strong team, and the same message has to be clear.
How do you get that employee satisfaction score? How does that is that them taking a survey about how happy they are working at, they're in their position, or how do you get that feedback to know how satisfied they are as an employee?
Yeah, so, one is a lot of our employees drive at different locations during the day, right? Did they get out in time? What time did you leave your last office? what time do you get to the next office? Helps with scheduling. Also helps with patients. If the employees are getting there late, patients are coming in late, and they don't want to drive. So should we open up one full day in one location and not have that happen? Sure. Lunch, employee time. Sometimes we get really busy and we cut lunch short.
Sure.
And so did you get your
What is lunch?
Yeah.
I don't know for people
He
listening.
doesn't know what lunch is.
What is lunch? Very, if my wife wants to grab lunch or somebody, not to just go on a tangent, but it's like, I have 5 minutes left on lunch. Like, I'm gonna go outside. It's like, dude, let's get back to work. Like, I don't like to just take those random breaks during the day. Like, I'm here, let's focus. But nonetheless, sorry.
I'm the same way, and HR comes to me. It's like, dude, they have to have.
They have to eat.
The 30-minute lunch break.
Sure, I know.
It's a law.
Sure.
And so, yeah. So
It's a law.
So we have to have so that's important. But and I have to be able to do that. And we do lunches too. So for all these offices, I'll try to go by. We'll do quarterly lunches every location with a core group of medical assistants to do that. And then you have your physicians who are completely different, right? And hearing their needs. The cool thing is a lot of them are equity owners in their own surgery centers.
It's amazing.
Which then makes them sort of, we think alike on decision making, and that helps a lot, right?
Did you set that up for them to be like that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing you did it like
huge.
that for them.
That's huge.
Yeah, I think that the 2-year experience for me was really important because I had equity, but it was minor, and I didn't have a say. And I think equity is important because I think substantial equity is important because I think it creates sort of a partnership on decision making, and you see things a little bit differently than you are as an employee or even a minority ownership. But more importantly is them being heard. So anytime I make a decision that revolves around their practice, I want them to give me a feedback. If I'm hiring a physician or we're interviewing and they do not but it maybe doesn't fit our mold,
Sure.
I actually take that into account. So I think making money is really important, and they're very successful. But I think coming to work, having a say in the business, and saying, hey, this is part of me. This is mine too. I think it's really important. And I got great docs, great guys, like brothers to me.
Sure.
Especially the 4.
Yeah, we see you guys go on trips. You're not going to go on trips people you don't like. These are people that you care about, love. You want to see them be successful every day. I want to touch back on meetings quickly because your whole day probably is meetings. And knowing just how you think, I know. I think people have to understand how to have meetings that are valuable and then meetings that just keep going. Yeah. And I can see you being the one where they're coming in there with metrics. It's this and this and this. Minimal emotion if you're showing facts and numbers, right? Yeah. Execute and out. And I feel like in a lot of businesses, people have meetings, and we get better at that. My old job before, we would have a meeting with everybody together, the accounting team, sales team. Like, why is everybody wasting their time on one fucking meeting when it makes no sense? Separate it out, but quick, sweet, short, done. People like to drag meetings out, and I can just sense from you, like if you're in a meeting with your team, like they know what you want, don't go on for an extra 20, 30 minutes about La La Land, in and out. And I think you really have to manage time with meetings when people are in your position because you have so many every day, you're on a schedule. Sometimes people just go off, different topics and just keep it to the point.
And the busier you get, obviously, the more efficient you have to be. So it's almost like, I have 10 minutes for this meeting, guys. Like, boom, boom, boom. There's no time for...
Are you like that at all? Or, I know you want to listen to them talk, but they know you to know what to talk about.
Yeah. So part of the private equity transaction and partnership has been that. So I went to a retreat, and the private equity portfolio companies that they own, other than me, were great. And the metric, a lot were software companies, they weren't medical practices. But what I took from that retreat was the way they standardized these meetings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then got feedback on Friday was very good. And it's something that we really hadn't done before. The private equity transaction.
Okay.
And that was 2018.
Sure.
The last 2 years, we put that in place. I want to get more efficient. So our meetings can drag on, but I think it's really cutting to the chase, making a decision, and moving on. And if there is an issue in that area and you don't want to resolve it around 20 people, you said, hey, look, let's just meet right afterwards.
Okay, true.
And then we drive meeting afterwards. So the finance team needs to meet with the controller.
Sure.
The downstairs, I call it the logistics team, has to meet with a logistics head and come back. And they have 15-minute meetings and they report back.
You're not taking up everybody's time.
No.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Data and numbers, whatever that is important because it creates an objective metric. And it may not be right at the very beginning. We looked at some stuff before, it didn't really drive decision making.
Right.
And that's an evolution and process. But that's really important. As you get big, you got to be able to do that.
Sure.
And again, we're getting better at that. So.
you get better over practice and time. You know.
I think just thinking about like other business owners that are watching this, it's hard to find good people. People are quitting, this, that, and the other, and just something you touched on being heard. Like there are things more valuable than money. Obviously, you get to a certain point. All right, now I'm comfortable. Like it's not like you're getting paid below minimum wage or something. Obviously, you have to make enough money. But like you said, having a say or feeling like you contribute to this business is something that I think business owners want to hear, because are there employees like helping in decisions, even if it's something super small, but you want to feel like, you have some type of purpose and say in what you're doing. And I think that's really cool how you developed it with, you're working with your docs. Like you guys are on the same, it's not like Dr. Patel and everybody's looking up, at him like they're scared. It's like, hey, let's make some decisions together. Obviously we know who's calling the shots at the end of the day, but I think a lot of employees are maybe underappreciated. I don't really know that because, David and Marina are awesome. And I feel like our culture at Melman Law Group is great and the team that we have, but there's probably a lot of other businesses that, they're maybe take advantage of their staff, or, they want to save money, or they're not letting them kind of in on it. But I just thought that was an awesome point you touched on for other business owners that maybe have to relook at how they have their business structured and how they're taking care of their employees. Are they doing meetings? Are they, having lunch together? Like, what does that look like? It's all about that culture of that particular business.
Sure.
Amazing
solid points during this. Anything you want to throw to any potential people that want to go into business, and like you didn't plan 10 offices or 11 offices. You didn't plan that. You plan 1, then 2, then 3. Sometimes people want to fast forward to everything and not take it step by step.
Yeah.
Anything you want to, any piece of advice you can leave them with, anything,
Yeah, I think number one is do something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's something that's tried and tried out, and everybody's done that, has done well. I think the other thing is, once you decide to do it, I think the important thing is creating a sense of urgency. And I think most successful entrepreneurs, a sense of urgency is probably the most common characteristic or idea that they have. And what that means is if I'm going to do something and I'm passionate about it, and you're all in, you need to be all in, number one. And then number two, there's going to be sacrifice, and you got to be okay with that. And then number three, when there is something to be done, you need to make sure it gets done quickly. And so that's what my goal is always, if I lose my sense of urgency at this point, it's because that's when I know that I'm not in it, my head's not in it. When we have a surgery center that needs to be accredited, we should call, why isn't Joint Commission coming today? Right. It should be coming tomorrow. Not wait a week from the next meeting.
Sure, sure.
That should happen.
It's amazing how many, in our day-to-day, like people that we deal with, how there is that lack of urgency. It's just so laid back, and we're like, that's okay, but those aren't the providers and people and organizations and you name it that we want to work with. Like, dude, we're waiting. I'm like, we're like waiting for that response so that we can then attack,
Do you think we're crazy, or...
Yeah,
I keep asking. I don't think I'm crazy. We want to get it done.
Yeah. That's why we work together well, right?
I know.
You text me, and if there's an issue,
it's in a minute. Like within a minute.
And what also it creates for me is we need to solve it, and also say, hey, what's the issue back end that I need to fix, and so or whatever it is, or getting a patient medical records in. I think that's important. If I tell an entrepreneur who's starting his practice something he's passionate about, and then once he decides to do it, he needs to jump in with a sense of urgency and not lose it.
Not lose it. And
So,
if you start losing it, maybe taking a break for a little bit, getting your mind clear.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure you burn out.
Yeah.
So
I think getting back, and that's where delegation and creating the culture of the employees around, right?
Right.
So they know the one thing that bothers me is not following up on things right away.
Sure.
And so I can get really irked about that. And so that's created a sense of urgency in most of my employees. Now, some not, but we're working.
What about people that they know that? Because sometimes they'll be like, how does our team or someone else not know David and Marina enough to know like what they want? Like they could tell them, but then maybe it just kind of doesn't happen. Because I'm thinking like, if I knew my boss or my, who I report to directly and how they are, I would obviously adjust, to those different people. But sometimes they just don't. And I don't know if it's just like, I don't know, sometimes it's hard to understand. Like, how do you not know who you're working for better at this point?
Yeah. I think at that point, then I find people who don't respond over a period of time after you made the effort, not to care about the business.
Yeah.
Or you individually.
Yeah.
Maybe individually, but maybe
Yeah.
at the business. So,
sure,
you know,
sure.
and that's an employer thing. And I think finding the right person then,
Yeah.
and that person may or not be a great fit for Melman Law or
Sure.
Spine.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. You know, you got to have good people that want to be there, that complement each other. One bad person can spread. You know, and for you to have the team set up with HR, compliance, like it's not going to spread. It's going to be cut off at the head before anything even can happen. You can't manage hundreds of personalities. You know, you can only see, react, and then help. But if some people just don't want to be helped, you gotta let it go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You gotta let it go and move on and get the next one. I mean, really great employees are tough to find. Team members, you got to manage them, nurture them, keep them engaged. You know, and that's, I think, crucially. You know, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's been
some
awesome.
huge value. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And yeah.
Likewise, we'll have to do it again. There's so much to talk about that, you know, we could talk for hours and hours, but, you know, maybe sometime in the future, we're going to have our awesome new setup,
Yep.
our own podcast room for Melman Podcast. We'll definitely have you roll back through
sure.
when that time comes.
Thanks, Dr. Patel. Appreciate you.
Cool. Rock and roll.
That was-